I think one will just be 90.
Okay, I think we're live.
All right.
Right.
Fantastic. Well, thank you everyone for joining. We're really excited to have you here today and to talk about one of the most interesting topics in the watershed, which is stormwater pollution. It actually is very fascinating and something that I think we can all learn a lot more about, something I didn't know about at all before I started working at the Mystic River Watershed Association. That being said, my name is Erica Wood. I'm the outreach manager here at Myra, and I will be on the webinar today just to make sure things are going smoothly, make sure we get your questions. We'll have time for specific Q&A at the end, but without further ado, I will pass things off to my colleagues, Catherine and Marion. Enjoy.
Great, thanks, Erica. Hey, everybody, thanks for joining us. Stormwater pollution might not be the most interesting topic to people initially, but I think you'll be surprised that it's really kind of a complex problem. My name is Marion Miller. I'm the Education Programs Manager for Mystic River Watershed Association. And in that capacity, normally you would find me not standing in front of my computer at my desk at home, but in classrooms or out in the field, talking with students about issues within the watershed. Stormwater is one. I do a lot of programming for schools sort of around that. So it's a very popular topic, and one that I really, like Erica, knew very little about before I started this job. And now I'm kind of passionate about stormwater and stormwater pollution and really its relationship to clean water. So I'm gonna let my colleague, Catherine, introduce herself.
Thanks so much, Marion. My name is Catherine Pedamonte, and I'm a project manager here at Myra. So I manage a number of projects, one of which is our Stormwater Education Collaborative. So while Marion is hanging out with our kids in our schools, I focus more on social media posts and making videos and even some flyers, brochures, utility bill inserts even, but information educating about stormwater pollution. What is it and what can you do? And yeah, so I'm glad you're all here today. Thanks, Marion.
Great, sure. So we're here today just to find out more about stormwater. First of all, what is it? I don't know if you can hear my rainstorm behind me. I was hoping for a real rainstorm, but I didn't have it. So stormwater, really, just like the word says, is water from a storm. Whenever we have a big storm falls on the ground, that's stormwater. So really basic. So related to that is the system that we as people have created to manage stormwater, particularly in urban areas. So let me see, I'm doing a low-tech presentation here. Storm drains, you've probably seen them. They are everywhere in modern human life, and their purpose is to keep our roads and roads and driveways and homes from flooding. So it's really a system for managing water and managing stormwater, just what it is. It's also, this particular thing could also be known as a catch basin. So it's everywhere, and yet it's totally invisible. We don't see this system. We don't think about this system. It's just part of regular life. And I think therein is the probably most important opportunity I have as an educator, is to help people to see and think about that system as a whole and how we interact. So when we're talking about water quality within the watershed, why is stormwater important to know about? So I'm going to pass that one to you, Catherine.
Yeah, so stormwater pollution, right now is one of the major sources of water pollution, especially in urban areas. So it is something, we all need to pay attention to. And just to sort of help conceptualize stormwater pollution, as Marion said, it's all invisible. So to kind of think through what that looks like. A few days ago, we had that big rainstorm. So what happens is that rain falls. It lands on our roofs, it lands on our driveways, our sidewalks, our roads. It lands on, are hard surfaces, so those impervious surfaces, and it just sheets right off to the nearest catch basin or storm drain. And from there, it goes directly into the closest water body. And as it sheets off those hard surfaces, it picks up whatever pollutants are in its way. So if there's some car grease on a driveway, it scoops that up. If there was a recent fertilizer application or herbicide or pesticide application, that rainwater might scoop that up and take it with it. Some dog poop that didn't get cleaned up. Maybe there's a bunch of leaves or grass clippings on the side of the road. That all gets washed down as well. And, I think some people might think, oh, well, the water that goes down the catch basin, it probably gets treated or filtered or something before it, lands in that, river, lake, or stream down the street from me. But it doesn't. It goes straight there. And so that's, clean water is really all about stormwater and those pollutants that are getting washed into our water.
Great. I'll pick up on that a little bit. So again, one of my goals with students, and I'm going to say with all of you too, is to think about where is the closest storm drain to you, by your house, by your apartment, whatever it is. But think about it. Where does that end? Those pipes underground go directly to the closest water body. So think about, where is your closest water body? My closest water body, where my storm drain is at my house, is one of the most polluted parts of the Mystic River watershed. So I know where mine goes. I'm not proud of it, but I do know where it ends up. But think about that, because it empties directly in. This is the piece I knew the least about, that whatever goes down that drain ends up potentially in the river, or the watershed, and eventually the river. So I asked students to be thinking about this. So what's the closest water body to you? And be cognizant of this system that we've created to manage floods, but now is a conduit for pollution in our fresh waters, which I think is really, again, invisible. So as Catherine talked about, rain falling down and washing on impervious surfaces that water can't go through. Nature has a really easy way to manage stormwater. When the rain falls on the ground, it usually seeps in, absorbs, maybe not all of it, but a part of it. So imagine you're out in the woods, you're highly unlikely to find a storm drain because it's not a necessary part of the system. Because we have so much paved system, paved land in our watershed, it becomes a very big problem. So our watershed's a very urban watershed. There are 500,000 people that live within our watershed. The river itself is only 7 miles long, so it's not huge, it's not really long. Our watershed is 21 communities. Again, that's not overly big, but it's very urban. And people are the messiest of animals. We use stuff and we get rid of it in ways that really mess stuff up. So I like students to think about, okay, so the natural system for managing stormwater is nature, okay? So if I went out in my yard and dug up some soil, I dug up the ground, I might have some rocks and some sand and some gravel and some soil and leaves or other plant material on the top. So with students, I want them to think about how this is a system. So not only is a storm drain system or a stormwater system something we've engineered, but nature also has a way to manage water, stormwater, or any other water. So if I were to pour a bottle full of water through here and take off the bottom and catch the end, we would see the water coming through. It wouldn't be rushing down to the storm drain because there would be space for it to be. There would be room. What would come out typically when I've done this with students, we get about a half of the container comes out, and that's recharging in the natural system. That's recharging groundwater. So there's a way to see and think about, wow, rainwater is really valuable. Doesn't always have to run off roofs and driveways and streets, but it could be part of the natural system that recharges the groundwater that then is back in the water cycle. So I think that that's an important message for for students to think about that nature manages stormwater, people manage stormwater. How can we learn from this? So that's one example of what I think about with stormwater and stormwater pollution. So there are a variety of pollutants. I think Catherine's going to highlight some of them in a little bit, but the ones I talk about with students a lot are trash. Trash, particularly plastic trash, ends up in the waterways. Every student knows about plastic in the ocean. Ocean pollution is plastic, the plastic islands, how detrimental it is to the organisms that live in the water, how the plastic's getting into our food chain. But what they generally don't know is the majority of the plastics and the trash in the oceans began its life on land. So in a big rainstorm, something this size can fit through the storm drain, can travel through pipes and end up directly in the river and then into the ocean, and then currents carry it and they seem to clump all together. So I think that that's a really important message, that not all pollutants are chemical, not all pollutants are invisible. A lot of the pollutants that we see currently right now is trash and other items. So you might find this in a storm drain or this in a storm drain. It's amazing the things that fit through. And as we sort this basket of pollutants in the classroom, you can really see people's sort of wheels turning like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. So that's my little piece about some of the pollutants. So I've talked a little bit, Catherine's talked a little bit about what we do and how we do it, and about stormwater and stormwater pollution. Maybe now would be a good time, Catherine, to talk more about what you do to educate people about the problem of stormwater pollution.
Sure.
And then you can throw it back to me.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. Let me share my screen. We'll look at some photos real quick, some images. Okay. So as we mentioned earlier, Marion tends to go in to schools and community spaces and work with our kids. And I tend to focus on the other end, so creating stormwater education materials. And I do this through something called the Stormwater Education Collaborative, which is a group of about a dozen cities and towns in our watershed that all came together. They're all interested in educating about stormwater education, but instead of having 12 separate municipalities sort of all recreating the wheel, right, all trying to coordinate and create stormwater education materials, we came in and said, look, why don't we create the materials and you all disseminate it? And it's a win-win situation, because for us, it means that we can reach a wider audience with, some of our messages around clean water. And for all of them, it's a win because many of our cities and towns don't have time to be trying to create brochures and flyers. So it's better if one person does it and we send them out. So just to sort of look big picture, and I love that we're doing this on the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, but water pollution has changed. And I think, oftentimes if you say the word water pollution to somebody, they're still thinking, I still think of the Lorax, right? You think of the big factory sort of belching pollution into the nearest water body, to the point where the fish are running away. It's so bad. The other image that I think some of us remember is, this image of a river on fire. It was so polluted that the river literally caught fire. And this was 1969, so the year before the first Earth Day. And I think, this was the point where people were just saying, enough is enough is enough. We really need to figure this out. So instead today, as we've been talking about, stormwater pollution or water pollution looks more like this. It's, this catch basin with some car oil grease and, some leaves and some trash, just waiting to kind of get swept down the catch basin and end up in our water. So this is all, all this change is thanks to the Clean Water Act. I promise not to spend too long on this slide, but basically the Clean Water Act, includes a bunch of regulations to limit the pollutants in our water. So one of these permits is called the NEPDES permit, and this regulates point sources, which means a single source. So when you think of that image of the factory in the Lorax, that's a single source discharging pollutants into the water. So they now can't do that. They have to, get a permit and can only go up to certain thresholds and have to report back on what they're discharging. The other permit I want to mention, which is sort of under the umbrella of the NEPDES permit, is the MS4 permit. And this is directly relevant to the work that we're doing. So the MS4 permit is a permit that is applicable to our cities and towns. So it's basically, on the right side of this picture, there's the outfall. So that's the other end of the catch basin. That's the end of that pipe discharging stormwater into, the nearest water body. So they, our cities and towns have to test this and have to report back on, what they're finding. Part of this permit also requires the cities and towns to educate about stormwater pollution. And that's sort of where this Stormwater Education Collaborative was born. A few years ago, we looked around, we saw the municipalities scrambling to meet this requirement. And we said, let us be sort of that linchpin. Let us create the educational materials, you guys disseminate it. And we've been moving forward on that, since then. So in terms of these outfalls, there's sort of a couple buckets of pollutants that we think about. So there's the bacteria bucket and the nutrient bucket. So the bacteria bucket mostly has to do with feces, and I don't think I have to say too much on why we don't want feces in our water. So that might be dog poop. It could be goose poop, from areas where we get a lot of geese. And it also comes from anywhere where the stormwater lines and the sewer lines somehow, overlap. So whether that's old infrastructure, so combined sewer overflows, which our cities and towns are trying to redo, where those lines actually did meet up during rainstorms, whether it's illicit connections, whether it's old pipes that are, kind of breaking down and some sewage manages to leach into the stormwater pipe. So, the cities and towns test here, and that way they can flag, okay, maybe this one outfall has real high bacteria. We have a problem that we need to look at. The second bucket is the nutrient bucket. And this one's where it starts to get a little bit hard to conceptualize. So the nutrient that's an issue in the Mystic is phosphorus. And at this point, you're probably saying, what the heck are you talking about? Phosphorus, what does that even look like? What does that mean? So it means a couple of things. So when we get real high levels of phosphorus, we end up with a lot of invasive plants in our water. So this is water chestnut. You'll notice you can barely see the river. It's so covered in water chestnut. So aside from probably being pretty annoying to these people in their boats, it's also not great for the fish. It lowers dissolved oxygen. It's not great for other wildlife. It's not great for the native plants that are trying to compete with this invasive. Another result of real high levels of phosphorus in our water is what's called a cyanobacteria bloom, which is a type of algae bloom, which sometimes can turn our river pea green, as is the case in this picture, but not always. And this one's an issue. It's a public health issue. It's literally toxic to humans and dogs. And, sometimes you might see your local river, lake, stream, water body closed off because of these, because this does happen when the levels of phosphorus get high. So in these educational materials that we create, the big thing we're trying to do is really inspire stewardship. I mean, the good thing about stormwater pollution is there are things that we as residents can do. So we try to help people see, here are positive steps you can take that will make our water cleaner. So obviously pick up after your pup. I don't think I need to say too much on this one. I think everyone can kind of get behind this one. Bag or compost your leaves. This one's a little bit less intuitive. When leaves break down, they release phosphorus. And so if a lot of leaves get washed down the catch basin, or even if they, sort of as they're decomposing, what they're leaching gets washed down the catch basin, that can contribute to high levels of phosphorus. So I think of in the fall when, the wind kind of blows leaves all over the place and they end up, along the side of the streets. That does contribute to real high levels of phosphorus in our water. And also, when we see our cities or towns are sending out those street sweepers, it's not, purely aesthetic. There are studies that show that increased street sweeping really does decrease the levels of phosphorus in our water. So that's what the cities and towns are doing. What we can do is we can bag those leaves, we can compost those leaves, we can keep them out of the catch basins. Fertilizer, again, there's phosphorus in fertilizer. So, what we advise to people with this is, we're not going to say don't use it, but just, kind of be smart about it. Test your soil first and see what exactly does my soil need. If you're going to use a chemical fertilizer, try to use a low phosphorus one, or even phosphorus free. So look at that middle number of the three numbers. Don't fertilize right before a rainstorm, because it'll get washed off your lawn and into the nearest catch basin. Grass clippings, kind of similar to leaves, as they decompose, they release phosphorus. So, you want to be careful if you're mowing your lawn near the road that it doesn't end up, all in the street and getting washed down the catch basin. So, either leave your grass clippings or bag them or compost them, mow higher, just kind of think about where those grass clippings are going. Use less salt. We've been seeing higher and higher salinity in our water. And that's due to, road salt. So again, with this, you got to do it. You don't want your neighbors slipping on your sidewalk. Like, it is important to use some sort of de-icer, but maybe use an environmentally friendly de-icer instead of road salt. Make sure you do a good job shoveling first. Again, so we're asking people to sort of balance the safety while being cognizant of, when all this salt gets washed into the catch basin, it does affect our water. And then finally, I wanted to show this picture. A lot of our cities and towns are doing some great work around green infrastructure. So this is a rain garden that Arlington built at the Hardy School. And rain gardens are really great at capturing that sort of first flush of water, the one that's got all the pollutants, and infiltrating that water and managing to pull some of the pollutants out, to filter those pollutants before they get to the catch basin. So again, our cities and towns are doing some really good work around green infrastructure, and we can too. Whether you have a big or small yard, can affect what you do, but maybe you could do a rain garden. Maybe you could get rid of some of your lawn and put in native plants. If you're redoing your driveway, think about porous paving, get a rain barrel. So there's some sort of fun things we can do on our end as well. So Marian, that's what I have. I can switch it back to you and can talk about fun stuff with kids.
Sure. Well, Catherine produces some really awesome materials that our municipalities in the watershed use, including a really cool video that you didn't mention, but I use in my work as a sort of a follow-up. So for students, the message is very similar. It's not that different from what we're saying to adults, certainly on a student level. Is think about what you do and how you act. Know about the pollutants. Be aware of where the storm drain is, and really know that the storm drain serves a function, and that the function is to manage stormwater, and that stormwater runoff is the biggest source of pollution, which people don't know. Again, people don't know. So there are some empowering things that students, and I thought when I first started doing the stormwater pollution with students, oh my gosh, this is such a hard topic, such a dry topic, and really so sad. It's not a happy story, although given, Catherine, your pictures from 1969, it is a happy story, but a 10-year-old doesn't have that point of reference. So I've discovered that the students just grab a hold. You can take action to reduce stormwater pollution on an individual level. And the students really have surprised me by that. And I guess one thing that they think about generally is something that they see and live with on their schoolyard all the time, and that's trash. So just by being mindful of reusing, reducing, and recycling, you can make a difference with stormwater. And that's one thing that students have been really attuned to. Another thing that some students that I've worked with recently have been doing is making their own public service announcements. There's an example of one. So Catherine, you make some pretty awesome public service announcements.
No, these are better.
Okay? These are hard to beat. And what students have done is post these in their classroom or put it on the school website as a way to tell other people. And really, honestly, that is the most important thing. This is an invisible problem. People don't know, people don't understand. And if you can help people to know, mostly people don't want to behave badly. They don't want to throw trash around. They don't want to pollute the waterways. So that's really the most important thing. So what I say to students is go home, find the storm drain near your house, and tell 2 or 3 other people at home what that is, what it does, why it's important, and something about stormwater pollution. So I do have some action steps. I'm trying to send home a card with them. I don't have a picture of the card here. Oh, I lied. We send home a card, and these are the action steps that we're asking students to do. Certainly not inclusive, but very doable. Recycle plastics and keep trash off the ground. No brainer. But who thinks about that as a stormwater pollution issue? How does that make a difference in our waterways? And it really does. Care for trees. We didn't talk overtly about that, but trees are awesome at managing stormwater. Their roots go deep. They help to pull the water down into the water table or down into the soil further. Their leaves, when they're leafing out, can capture water and reuse it. And through transpiration, they're recycling water through the environment. Trees are awesome. In urban areas, there aren't as many as we wish. So if you can plant trees, that's awesome. If you can care for the trees you have, that's fabulous. And you could plant some other plants. Again, I think Catherine had alluded to, lawns are not necessarily the most ecologically smart choice when it comes to the environment, but stormwater in particular, water's pretty good at running off lawns, not going down deep into the ground. So maybe plant some other plants. Maybe you could add a little biodiversity, which would be great for pollinators and the environment. It's Earth Day, plants and plants. Pick up after your dog. That's, again, an easy one and something that people don't think about, but kids are dog walkers often in the family, and just a reminder. But really, again, the most important one is tell others about the problem. Because if you know you can do something, if you don't know, then you won't do anything. So I would say my closing words, and then I'll pass it back to you, Catherine, is my message is clean water is important to all life. And I always bring my to make a final lasting impression. But really, clean water is important to all life on Earth, to us and everything else. So stormwater pollution being the biggest source of pollution, that's something we can do something about, because really it's on us. So that's my bid. Go ahead, Catherine.
Oh my gosh, Marion, I feel like there's not much I can add to that, but I can second the idea that, I feel like the part of stormwater that gives me hope is the fact that we can all be stewards. We can all actually make a difference with this. It's not, a big factory somewhere. It's actually much smaller steps. So it's nice to, feel like there is room for all of us to help confront this problem.
So I guess, Erica, we have wrapped it up.
Yeah, well, that was really awesome, guys. Thank you so much. I'm going to pop back on here just to see if we have any questions. Does anyone have a question for Marion or Catherine? It looks like we have one so far. So when it comes to bagging your leaves, is the concept more about keeping leaves out of the street because they can be important as natural mulch and protect plants over the winter? So is it okay to use them in your yard in a way other than, use them in your yard and not actually have to bag them and remove them as long as you're keeping them out of the street?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they're great if you can make them into a mulch and use them. That's fantastic. Yeah. In terms of stormwater pollution narrowly, yeah, we just don't want them, going down the drains or sort of decomposing and leaching down the drains. But yes, if you can use them, that's fantastic.
Awesome. We have one. Oh, it's not a question, but it's a good comment that rainwater harvesting can also minimize stormwater pollution. And
absolutely,
that's certainly true. So using rain barrels is a great option to help.
And increase
This is a good one. What is the role of a rain garden in reducing stormwater pollution? How does that actually work?
Yeah. Do you want me to take this one, Marion, or do you want to take it?
Well, I can start.
Okay.
So I'll go back to this example. Like if you can get some water to accumulate or go down into the soil, you're reducing the amount of runoff. So the idea to take a spot that maybe in the past was paved or maybe not, but had lawn, which was not as great at helping the water get down into the soil. A lot of rain gardens, and you'll have to speak more to this, Catherine, because I don't know the details, but rain garden, there's a formula. It's not just dig a hole, plants in, that it's engineered to maximize the amount of water that it can manage and get into the ground. So again, it's a more passive way of managing stormwater. So it's not a rain barrel, but it's a natural system that's engineered to manage stormwater. So if you want to add something, that's great.
Yeah, no, that you're right, Marion. I mean, I think to sort of build on what you're saying, yeah, a rain garden, the idea is to catch that, quote unquote, first flush of water. So when, storm starts, it's that first, I don't know, half inch or an inch of water that comes down that really sweeps up all the pollutants. So the idea behind a rain garden is to catch that first half inch to an inch of water and let it infiltrate down into, a mixture of soil and gravel that will filter those pollutants. So by the time that water gets down to groundwater, those pollutants have been pulled out. There's definitely, if you look up how to build a rain garden online, you'll see, a number of sort of different ways to do it, but that's the general idea.
Catherine, do you want to speak for a moment about the project in Arlington, if we have any Arlington folks on here?
Sure, yeah. I mean, Arlington is doing some really great work. I mean, a lot of the communities in our watershed are, but Arlington's doing some great work towards incorporating green infrastructure in the town in order to pull, in particular, phosphorus out of our rainwater. So we've worked with Arlington a few times over the last couple of years to secure funds to install both rain gardens and then also something called infiltration trenches, which are invisible, but essentially it's a big trench next to a catch basin with gravel in it, with the idea being that, again, that first flush of water, that the water goes into the trench first before it makes its way into the stormwater system in our water bodies, and then slowly infiltrates down and the pollutants are pulled out. But Arlington's really been looking at ways to design and install green infrastructure in a really cost-effective way. I think one of the challenges for our cities and towns incorporating more green infrastructure is it's really expensive to engineer and to construct. So these infiltration trenches, while not as beautiful and visible as rain gardens, are turning out to maybe be a more cost-effective and highly efficient way of filtering out some of these pollutants, in particular phosphorus. So keep a lookout in your communities, because it's not just Arlington. There's a lot of cities and towns that are really doing some good work towards this. Thanks, Erica, for bringing that up. Good point.
Yeah, of course. All right. Well, I think that's all we have time for today. But again, I really want to thank you all for participating, for celebrating Earth Day with us today. And I hope you'll join us on Friday for our virtual Earth Day celebration as well. Again, it'll be a birding and tree identification webinar at 4 p.m. on Friday. We'll all raise a glass, whatever you want to bring to Mother Earth. Hope you'll join us. Registration is both on our Facebook page and our website. And again, thank you, Marion and Catherine, for an awesome presentation.
Thank you, and thanks everybody for coming.
Yeah, thanks to everybody who came.
Awesome. Take care.
Yeah, have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.